Hello. In this podcast, we'll talk about the annotated bibliography. As with anything, you want to get a good start. You want to start out right. So hopefully you've gathered your sources at this point. You'll want to write your communication context before you write your annotated bibliographies. In fact, you should be writing your communication context before or with your research, to define your sources. You'll want to study examples of other annotated bibliographies, and typically you can do a search with Google or go to the Purdue OWL, which are always linked off of the on-course site that you have for your class. Or also there are generally samples posted in the resources. And you will want to write drafts for these. Later, in a bit, then you will submit them to your peers for a peer review. Now, in this class, as I'll go over here in a bit later, you have to write an annotated bibliography for each of your sources. So if you have 12 sources, you will be writing 12 annotated bibliographies. However, to streamline the peer review process, you're only required to present 3 of your peer review, or 3 of your annotated bibliographies for peer review. So don't get confused there. I'm not saying you only need to write 3. You need to write 10 to 12. Every source requires a annotated bibliography. Now, you'll use the communication context the same way you use it with the informative abstract. It's a guide. It gives you the roadmap, to the reader. And you'll want to follow it the same way you did with the informative abstract, so that because essentially the informative abstract that you did will be have the same audience that you're having for your annotated bibliography. So I guess the big question then is, what is an annotated bibliography? Well, it is an organized list of sources, kind of like a regular bibliography, but with a little bit extra. There's always some informative text following each source, the annotation part of the bibliography. And usually this, regardless of the length of the article or the source that you're working with, that informative text is generally 100 to 150 words in length every time. So I don't care if you've got a 100-page source or you've got a 2-page source, your annotated bibliography should always fall around 100 to 150 words. So what goes into an annotated bibliography? Well, an annotated bibliography describes the content of the article. It describes the usefulness. It discusses the limitations of the article. It describes the audience it was meant for. It evaluates the research very briefly, discusses the author's background, discusses the conclusions drawn, and very briefly it describes your reaction to that material. So, how is an annotated bibliography different from an informative abstract? Well, importantly enough, it is shorter and it is a fixed length. As I said, it is 100 words to 150 words. It explores the subject for further research. An annotated bibliography is not a substitute for reading the article. It is part of the decision-making process of whether that particular article or source or whatever it is suitable for inclusion in the final project, or or to be read by the higher ups, professors or CEOs, or whoever your audience happens to be. So it is not a self-contained piece of work. It is a roadmap into the document, the source. It even is maybe kind of a table of contents on steroids. In analyzing the information sources, you want to ask and answer, is the author credible? You want to ask and answer, who is the audience? And very importantly, when was it published? If it was published, in 1967, and you're talking about, and it's proper programming procedures for research labs or something, this is probably far too out of date to be applicable to your source. And remember, everything that you're doing is leading up to that final document you're going to write in Module 4, the proposal. So you want it to be timely, you want it to be up to date, and you want it to be accurate. Analyze the source and then look at it and ask the questions. Is the information fact? Is it opinion? Or is it propaganda? If you're looking for fact, opinion's okay, but you need to recognize when something is an opinion. And if it's propaganda, well, then it's probably useless to you, except maybe as an example of bad research. You'll want to ask, does the work provide new knowledge to the field? Is it something unique that you found amongst your sources? And how is it written? Is it understandable? Is it written in clear, plain English, or is it full of scientific jargon? Describe how it is written. When you're writing the annotated bibliography, this is your chance to evaluate the subject of your informative abstract. And this is the next module you'll be going into the literature review. This is an evaluation of the subject. Before you start writing your annotated bibliographies, and again remember, for the peer review process, you only need to present 3 completed annotated bibliographies. But for the final documents you turn in, you must have an annotated bibliography for every source that you do. So as you're writing your annotated bibliographies, go back and reread the articles. Try to adopt a new perspective, a more external perspective as you write them to help improve the process for you. And rounding up, you want to say, would you recommend the source to your superior or to your audience? Would you include it in a source in a research project? If not, then the source is probably of dubious value to you in further research. And finally, approach this from a new vantage. Take this opportunity to look at it from a different angle. Read the articles. It's very important that you read those articles and evaluate everything that's said. And with that, good luck with those annotated bibliographies, and let me know if you've got any questions.